of America. We are refinding ourselves. You all are phenomenal and did such a wonderful job. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I want to tell you, too, that I'm humbled for another reason to be here, and maybe it's best told by telling you a story that's told about Albert Einstein, who, in order to make some money when he was here, did an awful lot of, after-dinner speeches. And he was in the car going to yet another one, complaining to his chauffeur about the boredom of having to give the same speech over and over and over again. And his chauffeur said to him, "Sir, everybody's commented on how much I look like you and how much I sound like you, and I've heard you give this speech hundreds of times. I bet I could do it. Why don't you let me, we'll switch clothes, and you go sit in the back of the room, and I'll be Albert Einstein, and I'll give the speech." And Einstein, as many of you may already know, had this very wry and irreverent sense of fun, and thought that this was a great idea. So they switched clothes, and Einstein put on the chauffeur's cap, went and sat in the back of the room, and the chauffeur actually did an awesome job. He kind of pulled it off. He really had heard the speech so many times that he did a very credible job of doing it. He even was sailing through Q&A until this guy stood up who knew what he was talking about and wanted the world to know exactly how serious and thoughtful and well-educated he was, and he asked an incredibly difficult and technical question. And the chauffeur looked at him and said, "Sir, that question is so basic, I'm going to let my chauffeur, who's sitting in the back of the room, answer the question." I am the chauffeur. Because I've got to tell you, they've asked me to come up here and talk to you about what we've done and what you can do in fighting Obamacare. And there are so many people who know so much more about this subject than I do. But Dr. Eric Novak is speaking in this breakout session right after me. He is my personal guru on all things having to do with the practical pushback on healthcare. He's actually a practicing orthopedic surgeon, but he's responsible for the Healthcare Freedom Acts and lots of other legislation. There are many people. Heritage Foundation is here, a bunch of others. So if you have policy questions, I'm not your person. But what I can do is tell you what we've done, and maybe that'll provide some inspiration for you. A lot of practical ideas of things that you can do when you go back home with your own Tea Party organizations. I have been involved in the public policy world for quite a while. Independent Women's Forum, Independent Women's Voice is a policy organization that is focused very much on free markets and sound economic policies, as well as education issues and other things. But the healthcare fight came up, and we dove in headfirst. It was clear that this was such a threat, not only to our economy, but to our constitutional freedoms, and that this thing, once in place, would be so unbelievably hard to undo. So I spent all of 2009 working in every way I could with whatever group I could to try and aid and abet the pushback that we saw through the summer. And then in late December, Reid and Pelosi were not getting the message. It seemed to me that if we could take the Scott Brown race and turn it from being about just economics and national security to making healthcare and the 41st vote be the driving issue, that we could really make a difference. The professional political consultants thought I was smoking something and told me I was insane, that this was going to get lost. So we went and raised money, and Independent Women's Voice did an independent expenditure of $250,000. Finding local female physicians to record radio ads and phone calls, and you all know how the Scott Brown race turned out. And we kept that up. Thank you. Through February and March, trying to add value. We knew that there were groups going after seniors, they were going after business, but there wasn't really a concerted effort focusing on women who were 52% of the electorate, independents who are 1/3, very important to talk to on this issue. So we did calls and radio in key swing districts. We did very strategic polling, asking questions in ways that the left was not using polls to come up with very different results about what people really felt. Innovative ways of using teletown hall meetings so that we could have congressmen, they'd never done this before, call into other congressmen's districts to answer questions of the citizenry there about how this was really going to affect them, creating micro-targeted websites. After the legislation passed and we were getting into the summer, if you looked around at the campaigns, you would have thought that Obamacare would have been a very big issue going into the 2010 elections. But what I hadn't appreciated then, but I've learned since, is that campaign consultants are not paid to think about how you govern after. They're paid to win elections. And they were all getting data that said the best way to win is to largely be quiet, maybe talk about spending and let the other side, sink itself. So they weren't talking about Obamacare. So we decided that our mission was to make Obamacare be a top 3 issue for the 2010 election. And to do that, we did several things. On messaging and the constitutional arguments to help make it more accessible to people, we created healthcarelawsuits.org, which is in one place you can find out about all 20-plus challenges to the constitutionality of the law and the status of all the cases, all of the documents for each of it, and commentary from constitutional scholars. We created something called the Repeal Pledge because there were a lot of pledges out there, but they were not comprehensive. They didn't necessarily, some of them go beyond repeal to defunding and deauthorizing, or they didn't tie in, importantly, the after action with citizens also signing a companion pledge. So we created the Repeal Pledge, which our pledge also spoke to candidates as well as to incumbents to create pressure on existing incumbents. So that was something we did. We also created a site to promote not what we were doing, but to promote, there's so many great groups out there doing so much important work on healthcare. So we created a site called savingourhealthcare.org, which is a portal site to all the wonderful groups that are doing policy work, to the activist groups, to the different ballot and state initiatives. It's to all the legislation that's going on at the federal level, and it also has a calendar on it, so if groups are doing anything, they can post it, and you can look up by zip code or state and see if there's anything going on in your area. If you've got an event, you can post it there. So the idea is to make the community more easily find each other. That then played into creating ads for the campaigns and doing a lot of phone calls in the tight races where this was going to make the issue. So there were 20 races where the last week out it was still either leaning Democrat, likely Democrat, or too close to call, toss-up. And we did independent expenditures there, and 13 of those came with pledge signers prevailing. So we were very pleased about that.